Oh boy, it's my favorite time of year again, the Game Awards. Shockingly, this show was actually slightly less woke than last year, but significantly more boring to compensate, which I didn't even think was possible. There were clearly fewer games with diverse female protagonists. Two of the major woke awards, that being Games for Impact and Innovations in Accessibility, weren't given out on stage this year, instead just being filler categories in between commercial breaks. And to just straight up spoil what Game of the Year was, because I know none of you guys are going to watch it now if you haven't already seen it, Astro Bot won, an actual video game that has no politics in it whatsoever. Just a simple, pure 3D platformer like the good old days. It was probably my second favorite game of this year, so I couldn't be happier about that. That said, even though I think this year was less woke overall, both in its messaging and the actual game shown had less forced, diverse protagonists and less overt political messaging, it was still highly obnoxious, and I can't say I was excited for any game shown except one, but for the most part, the show was incredibly boring, inoffensive. The games shown were still a bunch of bullshit that no real gamer should be interested in buying, with a few exceptions. And although the show tried its hardest to not be controversial in any real way, there was still a decent amount of virtue signaling, especially towards the thousands of layoffs in the game industry this year. We even have a third woke award now, as you'll soon see. As for the actual awards given out in the show, for the most part, I really didn't give a shit. I think there was really only one category I was legitimately mad about, and if you know what my most controversial videos of this year were, you could probably guess which one that is. So I don't want to spoil everything in the intro, but basically this was the most boring year yet. I actually kind of wish it was more unhinged with the left-wing content, kind of like I just said in my Indiana Jones video, because it just ended up being a snooze fest. Basically just a glorified ad pretending to be the Oscars, made for people who don't even give a shit about video games. But I guess it's always been that way. So without further ado, here's my breakdown of the Game Awards 2024. Starting off with the pre-show, Sydney Goodman is once again back to host and gives out several awards that were deemed not important enough to show up during the main show. That being Best Fighting Game, which was given to Tekken 8, no big surprise there. Best VR/AR game, which I'm sure no one actually cares about. 3 esports awards, Games for Impact, and Innovations in Accessibility, which was truly shocking to me. In previous years, they were treated as one of the major spotlights of the show, being worthy of giving an award on stage to someone who gives some virtue signaling speech about accepting everyone and how their game helped LGBT people or minorities or whatever the hell. Just narcissistic self-flagellation so everyone can feel good about themselves. Isn't that great? And now they're just a minor footnote in the award show. Now, these 2 awards were replaced by something that we'll get into a bit later. But I think this is definitely a sign of the times. I'm not going to go around selling white pills just yet, but I think it's clear they're trying to dial back on the more overt propaganda. And the final award given during the pre-show was Best Family Game, and Nintendo actually got snuffed of any and all awards this year. Not a single Nintendo game won anything. This was given to Astro Bot, which I have to admit deserves it over these incredibly mediocre offerings from Nintendo this year. As for the game reveals, there were a few vaguely interesting things. There's a new 2D Ninja Gaiden game from the creators of Blasphemous that looks fairly decent. One that I'm sure some people got excited for a second about is that Warren Spector, the creator of Deus Ex, is working on a new game called Thick as Thieves, which I guess is a multiplayer version of Thief where you're competing to steal stuff. I'm gonna be honest, this just looks like slop. What people should already know by now is a lot of the legendary devs that created some of your favorite games 20 years ago have now become hacks or lost their talent or maybe never had it to begin with. Do I have to remind you guys about Mighty Number 9 or Yooka-Laylee or Shenmue 3, Death Stranding? I'm sure each and every one of you can think of at least one time you've been disappointed by a famous game director coming back to make a new game and it just ended up being mediocre or worse. The next one came as a bit of a shock to me, at least. If you've seen Amazon's Secret Levels, which just came out, you may have wondered what the hell was up with that Pac-Man episode that had absolutely nothing to do with Pac-Man. Well, as it turns out, there's a new game that doesn't even have Pac-Man in the title that is the exact same concept as the short. I guess it's like a 2D Metroidvania called Shadow Labyrinth, where you play as evil Pac-Man and eat stuff. Did people not learn from Bomberman Act Zero? Nobody wants to see an edgy, grim, dark version of their favorite colorful cartoon characters, especially when it looks like ass. As for the worst reveal of the pre-show, we have Tales of the Shire. My god, I couldn't think the Lord of the Rings IP could die any more after Rings of Power, but clearly Gollum in this game have proved me wrong. This has to be one of the most repulsive art styles I have ever seen. Tolkien's grandchildren really fucking sold out, man. This is just sad. As for the most disappointing reveal of the pre-show, we have the creators of Sifu's next game, and it's just a fucking soccer game. Wow, that sucks. And that was about it for the pre-show. I don't think any of the other reveals are really worth mentioning. Just the same typical indie shit where it's either incredibly cringe or a game you've already seen 30 times before. On to the main show. As Jeff Keighley gives his opening speech, he reminds us that this is the 10th anniversary of the Game Awards. It's crazy that this show has survived this long, I guess because Jeff is such a sellout. The show basically pays for itself. And as he drones on and on about all the great people who have come here tonight and how awesome gaming is, we're introduced to the new Muppet characters of this year, Statler and Waldorf, aka the critics from the Muppets show. And unlike every other year where they're usually a source of extreme cringe, I can't believe I'm saying this, but they were the best part of the show. At first it was a little cringy how they were basically just lampshading every problem I've talked about for several years at this point, but no, eventually they just start bullying the shit out of Jeff, and it's awesome.
Why isn't this theater full, huh?
Yeah, we heard you always sell out. Catch all that?
No, but I wish the rest of the show went that fast.
Yeah, it's like the game commercials with award interruptions. There's Kojima, look. Ooh. Did you know that Jeff Keighley's friends with him?
Yeah, but does Kojima know that? And I also heard they nominated DLC for Game of the Year.
That's like giving a Lifetime Achievement Award to pre-order bonuses. Time to watch Keighley make a fool of himself again.
Exactly! I love this show!
More Jeff Keighley!
Yeah, what a moron! Look at him!
Give it! Bring it to us!
Look at him just standing there! What a maroon!
For the first major segment of the show, Troy Baker, looking fruity as fuck, and our manlet god, Todd Howard, come out to try and shill the Indiana Jones game since it bombed horribly. They even wheel out the corpse of Harrison Ford to try and salvage yet another failure by Machine Games. And together, they give out the first major award of the show, Best Performance, and I gotta say, these nominees are kinda horrible. As much as I talk shit about the Silent Hill 2 remake, I feel like Luke Roberts probably deserved this one, but just like last year, it's clear there was a game that didn't do so hot earlier this year that the Game Awards just had to shill, that being Hellblade 2. Nobody fucking talked about it or played it, but somehow it managed to win multiple awards, the first of which being Best Actress, Melina Juergens, the voice of Mrs. Hellblade herself. Is it sad that I wouldn't even know Senua's fucking name if it wasn't in the title? They just nominated her breasts. That was it. Yeah, that's what they voted for.
It was me.
She won, and I'll admit, it wasn't the worst choice. I mean, the fact that what the fuck her face even is, I forgot, from Star Wars Outlaws got nominated. And you guys already know I'm Aerith's #1 hater. I fucking hate Aerith. Stop shoving her down my throat. She should be fucking dead. So those would have been the two that actually pissed me off, so I can live with this one. For the next segment, we have the first major game reveal of the show and the source of most of the controversy that came out of the Game Awards, that being the reveal trailer for The Witcher 4. Honestly, I feel like I don't even have to give my take on this. You guys already know what I think. Obviously, they fucking bogged Siri. No, this is not what someone looks like when they get older, you fucking retards. It's not like every goddamn woman gets plastic surgery when they hit 30. This is clearly what someone looks like when they get Botox injected and get hit with the uglification rays that every woman in modern video games gets. It's just incredibly fucking pathetic that people will pretend this is what aging looks like just to get a win on the chuds. So yeah, Ciri is now a post-wall roasty who somehow became a witcher, even though women can't become witchers. She already had godlike powers that basically stopped the apocalypse, but no, I guess that wasn't good enough. She's now a witcher, completely destroying the lore. And yeah, look, I'll say it a million times. I already saw this coming a mile away. Did everyone forget that CD Projekt Red on their own channel made a video talking about their approaches to ESG? So yeah, every single one of you who were hyped up for this should have known this would happen, and you clearly didn't learn your lesson from Cyberpunk's launch. Then for probably the most bizarre reveal of the entire show, we get Elden Ring Night Rain. Just when I thought that From Software was finally done making Souls-like games, Miyazaki himself saying he was done with them. Bandai Namco, I guess, put a gun to their heads and made them make a standalone co-op spin-off that combines the Elden Ring and Dark Souls universes. It was a joke that people were saying that Elden Ring is Dark Souls 4, even though I was thinking it the whole time, of course, even as I was playing the expansion earlier this year. But yeah, no, now we're just straight up reusing enemies and bosses and locations as well, it looks like, from previous games in the series. I feel like putting Nameless King as a boss in this standalone crap just is spitting in the face of anyone who took the lore seriously in these games. Everything is a fucking nihilistic multiverse now. I'm so goddamn sick of multiverse shit. But yeah, worst case scenario, this ends up basically just being an asset flip with forced multiplayer and the same exact gameplay as Elden Ring, just with new Ashes of War. So at the end of the day, it'll be at least a 7 out of 10. After an ad break where basically nothing of note is shown, the celebrity who funded the Tales of Zao, whatever the hell it's called, the Afrofuturism game that bombed horribly earlier this year, reads out the nominees for Best Action Game. Yes, this is probably the only real improvement over last year. If you'll remember, and I'll forgive you for forgetting, Best Action Game was not given out on stage last year. You know, only the biggest fucking video game category outside of Game of the Year was given just a footnote in last year's Game Awards. Now, thankfully, it's given out on stage, but there's only one problem. What the fuck does action game mean? Call of Duty is competing with Black Myth Wukong? Does no one see a problem? And the reason for that is there hasn't been a best shooter or best FPS at the Game Awards in like 8 years. So yes, now hack and slash, action RPG, FPS, and third-person shooter are all in the same category. What a fucking joke, dude. And I actually predicted the winner for this one during the stream. I'm predicting it's going to be Black Myth Wukong wins. China's got to get a win. This is China's win.
And the Game Award goes to Black Myth Wukong.
I knew it. I knew it. Called it. China wins. And yeah, I have to say, I have no real complaints here. I think Black Myth Wukong was pretty good. And I think it's obvious that China had to win at least one award during this show. As Jeff builds up the next major release, I couldn't help but feel like he was cheating on Kojima, because instead of showing Death Stranding 2, he actually showed the next game from the creators of Shadow of the Colossus, which, just like I already said about Warren Spector earlier, there's no reason you should get hyped about this because The Last Guardian was not that great. Now, of course, I hope this game ends up being good because I really like Shadow of the Colossus and I like giant robots, and climbing giant things is always fun. It's why Dragon's Dogma is one of my favorite games. But if their last game wasn't that great, why would you think the new game is going to be good? And the reveal trailer showed almost nothing, and I think Jeff knew this, which is why he tried his hardest to shill it.
You can just feel the emotional depth of that game in that beautiful piece.
Could you feel the emotional depth based on Next up, we had the first of many musical segments. I feel like almost a quarter of the show this year was just music that I couldn't listen to since I was streaming it. When over half your show is commercials and a third of what's left is just fucking songs, do you even have a show at this point? For the next reveal, we have the first gameplay trailer for Outer Worlds 2, and like I said years ago at this point, Outer Worlds was shit. And it's looking like Avowed is gonna be shit too. In fact, I'm really surprised they didn't talk about it during the show at any point. The first Outer Worlds was truly one of those games that midwit socialists overrate because hating capitalism is their only purpose in life. And I guarantee the sequel will only be marginally better at best, and if the whole theme is still capitalism bad, then the writing is still gonna be horrible. And the game literally cuckolds you. The only likable female character in the game is not only not romanceable, but she's a lesbian, and her companion quest involves you taking her on autistic dates with her girlfriend as you sit in the cuck shed watching. This is a series for demoralized bug men. So yeah, sorry about that tangent, but I feel like every time Outer Worlds is brought up, I gotta get my rage out. For the next reveal, we have the return of Joseph Ferris, everyone's favorite recurring character in the Game Awards, and unfortunately, he doesn't really say anything too funny this year. And his new game reveal is basically the same 3 games that he's already made. It's another co-op game that, thankfully, you only have to buy 1 copy of to play with a friend. Unfortunately, this one looks pretty cringe compared to some of his other ones. You play as 2 female friends, who no doubt are lesbians, as they go through fantasy and sci-fi worlds, and it's goofy and meta and Reddit. Yeah, I'm not too interested in this one, I'm gonna be honest. After another commercial break, we have the worst part of the show, the new woke award, Gamechangers. It starts off with Jeff talking about how horrible it is that all these people have been laid-offed in the game industry for being worthless diversity hires who should have never gotten a job in the first place. And as if to confirm that I'm 100% correct, the winner of the Gamechangers Award is this guy called Amir Satvat, who I guess created this program to help laid-off game developers find job listings and give them mentorships and other shit. Completely pro bono, by the way, so I'm sure a government is getting scammed for this shit. Oh, and as it turns out, he works for Tencent, so this is basically being subsidized by China. But I'm sure he did it out of the good of his heart. And can you take a guess what the developers look like that he's helping? Yeah, these are totally the people I want working in the video game industry. They totally look like they want to make the best video game possible. Yeah, no, I think it's pretty transparent what's actually going on here. This guy's program is ensuring that the people who should be fired for being highly incompetent diversity hires, who were only working for those companies in the first place to raise that company's social credit score so that they would get funding from BlackRock, now have a way back into the industry after they were fired for good reason. So now they can go ruin another dev studio somewhere. Isn't that great? Yeah, no, fuck this gay-ass virtue signaling shit. And I'm gonna have to force myself to move on here before I let my noticing get a hold of me and I say what I really want to say. I don't think I'm ready to get banned just yet. And then Randy Pitchford comes out to advertise Borderlands 4. He never mentions the horrific failure of his movie that I reveled in personally. But yeah, Borderlands 4, there's not really much to say. It's more fucking Borderlands. The only thing to note here is this has got to be the worst designs for playable characters this series has had yet. Not one of these 4 people is actually white. Maybe the big guy, but even he's pretty fucking swarthy. But if you played Borderlands 3, you already know this series is woke, so you know what you're getting into. If you're buying this, you're part of the problem, you're killing the video game industry, and you clearly have no self-respect if you want to support Randy Pitchford. So, moving on. Then we get another set of filler award categories. I don't particularly care about any of these categories, but I do find it a little strange that art direction isn't important enough to be on stage. After yet another commercial break, we get another musical performance. I swear we've only had about 5 minutes of the actual Game Awards show in between commercials at this point. This is worse than actual cable TV. And we finally get another major reveal for the Virtua Fighter reboot. As someone who doesn't care about fighting games, I have no personal interest in this, but I'm sure some people are excited. Then the next trailer is for a new game called Project Century by the creators of Yakuza. And it looks like it's basically just Yakuza in the early 20th century, so I'm sure if you're a fan of that series, you'll like this. And finally, after what felt like an eternity, Jeff Keighley brings out his boyfriend, Hideo Kojima, to ramble on about game direction for what feels like 10 fucking minutes. Kojima was going on so long that the translator wasn't actually translating what he was saying and just reading off of a script. Now, if you hadn't already read up on the nominees for the Game Awards beforehand, you might be extremely confused why a game called Balatro is here, which people have told me apparently a shit ton of streamers and content creators hype the fuck out of. In case you're like me and hadn't even heard of this game until like 2 months ago, it's a roguelike deck building game based around poker, and it got nominated for like 3 major categories at this year's Game Awards. I have no idea why. Is this proof that streamers now have an influence on what gets chosen for the Game of the Year awards? I don't know. In any case, it clearly doesn't belong here. But thankfully, the winner of Best Game Direction was actually Astrobot. The fucking baby game Master Race be eating good tonight. For the next major reveal of the show, we get the return of a classic game franchise, Turok. And unfortunately, it is a co-op third-person shooter. Once again, the monkey's paw curls. How do you fuck up this bad? It's an FPS franchise. All we want is a story about a Native American who gets transported to another world and has to kill dinosaurs and lizard men with his tomahawk and sci-fi guns and shit. Is that really so hard to make? Then the next 3 reveals are all live service game related. First up, we've got the next Helldivers 2 expansion to beg the players to please come back. Now we've got zombies, so it's like literally every other horde shooter game in existence. And then they roll out the creative director for Warframe again, and she's looking like she probably packed on a few pounds. Gotta throw a bone for the hag enjoyers. I've heard there's a lot of zoomers into that sort of thing. And it's not an expansion for Warframe, it's a reveal for a prequel to Warframe. Wowee! And for the third game, remember Palworld? The ultimate flavor of the month game that everyone pretended was amazing for about a week? Yeah, that's getting another expansion. Hooray. And for the next major award category of the show, the creators of Shovel Knight come out to read the nominees for Best Debut Indie Game, and I didn't play a single one of these this year. The funny thing is, I actually played like 3 or 4 pretty great indie games, but none of them were nearly popular enough to make it here. And of course, the winner was Balatro, because this is truly the best indie games have to offer. A roguelike deck-building poker game. I'm sure it'll be replacing AAA any day now. For the next world premiere reveal trailer, we get the return of another classic franchise that hasn't seen the light of day in a long time, Onimusha. I actually haven't ever played these games, but they do look decently fun, so I probably will play at least the first one before this new one comes out. But I do find it a bit strange that Capcom is bringing this back instead of Dino Crisis, which I feel like people have been asking for like 15 years at least. But still, at least this will be a pretty cool game as long as they don't fuck it up. Then we get yet another trailer for the first Berserker Kazan, which I feel like got revealed like 2 years ago or something. Thankfully, it's coming out in March, so we'll finally get to see if this is going to be more derivative slop or if it's going to be an underrated middleware classic. Next up is a trailer for Dying Light the Beast, which I guess is the third game in the series or a spin-off or something. I don't know. I wasn't a huge fan of 2, as you know. And then next up, we get the next set of filler award categories. And I feel like I have to take back the praise I gave for bringing back action game on stage, because fucking action adventure game, probably the second biggest genre in gaming, doesn't get a real segment in the show. Are you fucking kidding me, man? And I have to point out once again, can these people define what action adventure game means? Astrobot and Silent Hill 2 are in the same fucking category. It doesn't get any more comical than that. Whatever, Astrobot wins another one, which is kind of absurd, let's be honest. And then another game genre that gets shafted is Best RPG, which I think has gotten shafted every year I've covered this, at least as far as I can remember. Obviously, I forget these shows less than a week after I see them. And the winner is Metaphor, which I'm not going to comment on. I've definitely seen some questionable screenshots about the political content in that game, but to be fair, that's without context, so sure, as far as I'm concerned, it deserves it, I suppose. Then we get Best Content Creator of the Year award, and of course, The Synthetic Man isn't on there. I just find it funny that every single year they do this, I barely even know who the hell these people are. And the winner was Queso, and thankfully, there's no segment where he comes up on stage and says some cringy shit. But then again, maybe that would have added some entertainment value to the show. The fourth category was for Best Racing and Sports, which I don't think anyone gives a shit about. And then we had Best Strategy/Simulation Game, which was Frostpunk 2, which I never got around to playing, but I did hear it was good, at least. Then we get yet another commercial break. Holy hell. And then we come back to a big Squid Game reveal. Does anyone still care about Squid Game? I feel like making a game for it is way too little too late, especially since there was like a unofficial Squid Game not too long after the show originally came to Netflix. Then to present Best Ongoing Game, Snoop Dogg and his son show up. Apparently they've launched their own gaming studio to promote minority voices. I wish I was making this shit up. And look, I know I'm repeating myself, but why the hell is Best Ongoing Game given out on stage, but Best Action Adventure Game isn't? Whatever. The winner is Helldivers 2, despite the fact that probably for half of this year, people were bitching about every gun getting nerfed, but I guess since they reversed those nerfs, everything is good again. Yeah, no, this is just another paid advertisement, especially when you look at the other nominees. Helldivers 2 is the only one of these that actually came out this year. And look, man, you know I want to say it. I love my lowbrow, edgy humor, but seriously, did he fucking bring his special needs girlfriend to the stage? What the fuck is this? And for our next game reveal, we have the creators of Overcooked's next game. And you just knew there had to be some fucking DEI character designs in one of these trailers. What is with this CalArts baby shit? This is cringe as hell. Then the next reveal is for a game that probably should have been announced more than 5 years ago now, a Game of Thrones video game. This is almost certainly going to be another flop. I don't think anyone gives a flying fuck about this series after that last season. And the show had been going to shit since like the end of season 4. This is yet another example of how out of touch Warner Brothers is. They're probably the most clueless game publisher of them all. They've made terrible decision after terrible decision over the last several years, and this just seems to be yet another one. That said, and I have to look at the silver lining here, this is one of the only new game reveals with a white male protagonist. It's incredibly sad that that feels like an actual stunning and brave creative decision in this day and age. After another, say it with me, commercial break, two of the cast members from the upcoming Last of Us Season 2 TV show adaptation come out to, of course, read out the nominees for Best Adaptation. Of course, before that, we were subjected to quite possibly one of the worst torture methods for the ears imagined by man, a female comedy routine.
I know that while we both spent a lot of time with Ellie, we heard so many lame puns.
Oh God, so many lame puns. You know, actually, there was one. Did she ever tell you the one about tripping over your girlfriend's bra?
No, not this one again. No.
Yeah, it was a real booby trap.
Oh.
Now, I don't think I need to tell you any of the nominees for Best Adaptation. You already know it won, and I think you already know how I feel about it. Are you fucking kidding me? An adaptation that exists solely to shit in the fans' mouths. And of course, normies ate it up. They fucking loved it. Why? Because they don't know what Fallout's about. These fucking retards still think it's about capitalism when one of the co-creators literally said it's not about fucking capitalism. But if you cared about the West Coast lore or the stories of any of the previous games, well, go fuck yourself, because it's getting nuked back to the Stone Age, and that's a good thing, because even though it's been well over 200 years since the apocalypse, we need to stay in the eternal caveman stage of rebuilding rebuilding civilization. I don't think I've ever seen a show get away with this many retcons and people still like it. I mean, really? We're all okay with ghouls now having to take a serum to not go feral, for them to only get killed by being shot in the head, for power armor to work like Iron Man suits that you could just like lasso like a cowboy out of the air. Look at how bad this looks. People thought this looked okay. We're also fine with the most idiotic, nonsensical motivation for Vault-Tec to nuke the entire world to somehow make more money. Yeah, by killing 99.9% of your customers, you'll somehow make a bigger profit. People actually listened to this and were entertained by this and thought this was a good show. You are dumb. This is going to sound like some crazy schizo exaggeration, but I believe the reaction to my videos surrounding this show single-handedly made me hate normies like 10% more. The simple reaction to me noticing what pretty much anyone with a brain has over the past 10 years, that the amount of interracial couples in media has skyrocketed, where they're in every single commercial and streaming TV show and movie. Just pointing that out makes me racist for some reason. It's just an objective fact. But yes, that triggered people, including giant YouTubers who think that it's okay for children to chop their dicks off as long as their parents say it's okay. No, I'm not going to let that go because that's not acceptable. The fact that Zoomers worship this guy as their new Jesus is incredibly pathetic. Literally all he's done ever since he revealed his face was just parrot your own opinions back to you, and you love that. Even Mauler agrees with me that that show is dog shit, yet who took all of the heat? Me. Why? Because I'm a chud, okay? At the end of the day, I am a problematic edgelord who wrong thinks in this day and age, which is just too much for mainstream YouTube cuckolds. I truly do not respect you as an equal on any level if you would argue with actual fans of the Fallout games over that piece of shit. Fuck you, eat shit, you fucking subhuman. Woo! Okay, I was holding that one in for about 6 months for when the time was right. Okay, let's move on. The next trailer is gameplay of Den of Wolves, which I believe was revealed last year. It's basically just sci-fi payday. Not much else to say about that. Then there's more ads and yet another musical performance. Then there's another commercial break immediately afterward that is not a joke. Then finally, we get the next major award category as singer-songwriter Khalid, I have no idea who that is, I'll be honest, reads out the nominees for Best Soundtrack. And it's weird that the 2 remakes were the only 2 games on here that I think really deserved it, and Final Fantasy VII Rebirth finally won something. This is probably the only category it actually deserved. I actually quite liked the arranged soundtrack, and there were a few original tracks in there that were also pretty good. So no complaints from me, really. It was definitely a good soundtrack. Then we get a debut trailer for another Sonic All-Stars racing game, though I guess they dropped the All-Stars part of the title. There's another trailer for Mafia: The Old Country. I'll be honest, I'm not really a huge fan of those games. Those are definitely some of the original movie games. Then we get the last round of filler award categories, starting with Best Indie Game. Yes, there are 2 Indie Game Award categories if you forgot, one for debut and just one for general indie. And guess what? Balatro won again, which makes me just ask the question, what the fuck is the point of having 2 indie game categories if the same game wins both? And to make matters even worse, Balatro wins the next category as well, Best Mobile Game. The third category is for Best Audio Design, which goes to Hellblade 2. I have no comment on this, really. And then the final category, arguably the most important, Player's Voice, goes to Black Myth Wukong. And normally you'd be like, oh, okay, that's fine. That game was pretty good. Except, did you notice the 5 nominees here? Are you noticing a pattern between 4 out of 5 of these games? Yeah, I think it's fucking time to block China from voting on the Player's Voice Awards. There's no way in hell actual gamers, people who play real fucking video games, voted for Genshin, Wuthering Waves, and Zenless Zone Zero in the top 5. No, these are fucking Chinese bots, and I don't even necessarily mean like AI bots. These might be human bots, so really only human on a technicality. And of course, all of us made fun of Jeff Keighley for putting Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree as one of the nominees for Game of the Year, despite being a DLC, not a standalone DLC. You have to play through about 90% of Elden Ring just to fucking play the DLC. We all made fun of him, yet the players voted for Shadow of the Erdtree to make it to the top 5. Are you starting to understand why I ranted about normies with the Fallout TV show? Because I can't imagine any other group voted for a literal DLC to be Game of the Year. And do not even try to claim that this is some kind of statement that 2024 was so bad that a DLC was the only thing worth voting for. You shouldn't vote for a DLC out of principle. But no, apparently Jeff is just representing the people. I and many other people have said it over the years, but gaming going mainstream was a mistake. After what feels like the 50th commercial break, Laura Bailey and Aaron Paul, of all people, come out and give us another comedy cringe fest. And I can't be the only one who finds it weird how close he's getting to her. Does Travis Willingham know that this is happening? And they reveal a new Telltale game that is about superheroes, I guess, but you play as a retired Iron Man, more or less, who is a hero dispatcher. And I'll be honest, I wouldn't give a single fuck about this except for one minor detail. At the end of the trailer, Jacksepticeye and Moist Critical are voicing in this game. Yeah, I don't think I need to say anything else. I think I'm already in hot water, but that should tell you whether or not you should buy this game just by itself. Then Sam Lake comes on stage once again. The stage cuts to black and white, and I thought they were going to tease a reveal for the Max Payne remake that has been rumored to be in development for like years at this point, but no, he's just here to read the nominees for Best Narrative. And the winner is Metaphor ReFantasio. Again, didn't play it. I have heard some bad things, but I'm not going to speak with confidence on this. People do like to post stuff out of context sometimes, but it does sound like the type of game that is promoting diversity and socialism, etc., whatever. I don't know for certain. The game is probably like 100 hours long, just like Persona 3, 4, and 5, so I just don't have time for an RPG that long anymore. And just when you think not a single thing of value would have come out of this show, finally, a reveal that me personally was waiting for well over a decade. Okami 2 is in development. I can't fucking believe it. This was up there with Dragon's Dogma 2 as a game that would never get made. Now, knowing that this is Capcom and Capcom fucked up Dragon's Dogma 2, I can't get my hopes up too high, but I really never thought there would be another Okami game after the DS one didn't do so well. So yeah, that was probably the one part of the show that brought a legitimate smile to my face, I have to admit. After one final round of commercial breaks, Jeff Keighley nearly cries rambling about the Game Awards and then hypes up one last big game reveal. And I'm thinking to myself, oh shit, are we going to see something actually exciting and interesting? And well, I'm sure you've already seen the news. We get the reveal for Naughty Dog's next game starring this fucking creature. What the fuck? They'll never learn, man. This chick looks like Vin Diesel mid-transition, or like a Thai ladyboy on steroids. I mean, what the actual fuck is this character design, dude? And the funny thing is, the model for this character is black, yet the character looks way more Asian. I don't know if yellow washing is a term yet, but fuck it, I'm down for people to cancel Naughty Dog over this shit. That'd be funny as hell. Even if you ignore the disgusting protagonist aside, this looks like yet another Guardians of the Galaxy ripoff, which Concord just bombed. It might even be the biggest bomb in video game history. And what are they doing? Naughty Dog is releasing a single-player Concord. Well, I'm sure that'll work out well for them. I can't wait for this game to bomb, dude. I want it to happen so bad. If Naughty Dog gets shut down, that would make my year. That's not even a joke, dude. Well, no matter what, I'll just say it now. Do not buy Intergalactic, the Heretic Prophet. I'll probably review it just because, well, you know me. I'm a masochist and I love reviewing slop. But seriously, don't buy it no matter what. And then finally, after nearly 3.5 hours of pain, the director of Baldur's Gate 3 comes out to give a speech before they reveal the nominees for Game of the Year. I would like to play you the full speech, but I get the feeling this video would get taken down for copyright reasons. But long story short, he says that the formula to making a great game is very simple, yet people lose it all the time, which is to let developers make the game they want to make. If the devs find it fun, the players will find it fun. Stop shoving in microtransactions or unnecessary features to make the game appeal to as many people as possible. Don't treat devs like shit or the players like shit. He even says, don't put things in the game just for political reasons, which I'm not sure this audience understands what that means, but I do agree with the statement for sure. The only problem I have with this speech is that it assumes that the developers working for these game companies are competent and can be trusted to their own devices. While there's no doubt that corporate meddling makes video games more generic and obviously less good for that reason, many developers want to put politics into their games. You could even say it is their purpose to put their personal politics into their games. I think the Naughty Dog game that was just revealed is an excellent example of that. I think in reality, people don't actually know what it means to make a game that you find fun. If the devs you hire didn't play video games growing up and still don't care about video games now because they were only given that position to fulfill a quota, how can you possibly expect them to make a good game? And while, of course, there's the argument that game devs in the 80s, 90s, and up until the late 2000s didn't grow up playing video games, at the end of the day, they were very intelligent and dedicated people who were passionate about the medium and really worked to make a game that they found as fun as possible. They were making a video game for the players as much as they were making it for themselves. Whereas modern game devs, even when they don't have corporations breathing down their neck, are making games only for themselves and fucking hate the player. And they have told us as much many, many times. So yeah, this video is long enough, so I'm not gonna go off on a whole tangent about this, but yeah, again, I agree with the general message of the speech, but this is a classic case of not being able to read the room, at least from the gamer's perspective. Now, for the nominees of Game of the Year, we have Metaphor Fantasio, Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, if you need another reminder that yes, DLC can be nominated for Game of the Year. Balatro, which, come on, man, I don't care how much you like this game, look at it. You really think this deserves to be nominated as one of the greatest games of the year. Astrobot, which, I mean, I fucking love 3D platformers. I absolutely can't talk shit. Playing through this game reminded me of my childhood in the best way possible, even if it was a bit flawed in certain ways. Black Myth Wukong, which, yeah, I guess it deserves to be here. It was a pretty good game. It is pretty notable being like the first legitimate AAA game to come out of China. And finally, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, which, again, there's no way in hell this deserves to be here. It's 1/3 of a remake that every single change it makes to the story of Final Fantasy VII made it worse. I can't wait till this game comes to PC, so at least another million people can realize that this remake trilogy was a fucking mistake. And as I already spoiled for you in the beginning, the winner is Astrobot. Fucking baby game master race, hell yeah. It's time for the era of 3D platformers to begin again, please. An official announcement for Spyro 4 would probably be the only game I could possibly ever get excited for, even if I likely would be disappointed. That said, I heard it didn't sell all that well, being trapped on the PS5, which is basically a failed console. Maybe it'll come to PC late next year like a lot of other Sony exclusives have been. I would truly recommend it to anybody who has a PS5, especially since there's like no exclusives on it anyway. You might as well get it. It's one of the only good ones. But yeah, I don't think I've ever been this happy about a Game of the Year winner, and not because it was objectively the best game, but just because of what it represents, that we need more family-friendly games, more kids games. Kids should not fucking grow up playing Fortnite. They need to play real fucking video games so that they actually have good taste and stop consuming the fucking slop that they're fed every single year. And maybe they'll begin to understand why video games used to be a lot better 20 years ago. Because I grew up with so many great kids games. Spyro, Crash Bandicoot, Jak and Daxter, Ratchet and Clank, Sly Cooper. The list goes on. And Astrobot is basically just a graveyard of all of the great franchises PlayStation used to have. It's so depressing. That said, great game. Game Awards were absolutely fucking ass. Usually I would have this huge conclusion where I wrap up, why was it bad? How woke was it? The future of gaming is bleak, etc., etc. But no, I think you already know. There's no reason to cover it again. This was probably the worst Game Awards yet. Again, not because it was the most woke, just because it was the most boring. It felt like the biggest waste of time yet. There wasn't even any, classic cringe moments. No, if anything, a lot of the cringe felt forced, namely the female comedy routine. Nah, the rest of this was just incredibly dull. The vast majority of the game reveals were for games I didn't give a shit about. Okami 2 is legitimately the only one that I'm interested in. Probably the only game that truly got shafted at this show was Shadow Generations, which didn't even get a nomination. So yeah, a pretty shitty way to wrap up this year of gaming, but it really says something about my apathy towards the video game industry at this point, when the only real emotions I could drudge up for this was to just hate on the Fallout show even more. Of course, I'm still going to be making my own best and worst games of the year video, so look forward to that. But fuck you, Jeff. You suck. Your show sucks. Everyone who likes you sucks. And Kojima likes it when you suck him off. Merry Christmas, and see you next time, guys.